References for criteria and credits related to company personnel are shown here. ISO's fire suppression rating schedule defines company personnel as the average number of firefighters and company officers available for existing companies. This rather narrow definition does not include the incident commander or personnel involved in water supply activities. PIAL has broadened ISO's definition to include both of these categories of personnel, as long as they are first alarm responders to structural fire alarms. There are two limitations to the number of creditable personnel. The first is that to be counted, all personnel performing suppression activities on the fireground must have personal protective ensembles, or PPE. And the second is that credit for company personnel is limited to the number of firefighters meeting the general requirements of training, which PIAL considers to be a minimum of 12 hours. Let me clarify this. We do not compare names on fire reports to training records, so if you have 20 active members on your roster and any 10 of them respond to every working fire, but only 4 people in the entire department received at least 12 hours of training, your credit for personnel will be based on the 4 members who received training, regardless of whether or not those 4 ever responded to an alarm. Of the 5 categories of personnel shown here, only 2 are commonly used: on-duty firefighters at the fire station and on-call or off-duty firefighters. We do occasionally see valid automatic aid, and when we do, we credit those personnel as is appropriate. Let's look at each of these 5 categories individually. The category for on-duty firefighters at fire stations is fairly self-explanatory, but still bears discussion. PIL considers all members of the Graded Areas Fire Department who participate in fire suppression activities as creditable personnel, even if they are performing command or water supply functions. Credit is awarded for any personnel scheduled to be at the fire station according to a predetermined assignment. For most departments with 24/7 manning, this is not a problem, but we occasionally run into a department that has volunteer members who live at a fire station or who may fill in for vacationing on-duty members. These members need to have scheduled times that they will be at the fire station and available for dispatch. When conducting our field visit, PIL will randomly select several days during the year and review payroll or other attendance records so that we can accurately award credits. After the review is completed, an average daily manning is determined, and this is what your credit will be based on. Credit for public safety officers is not unheard of, but it is extremely rare, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. There are a lot of requirements shown here that must be met for these members to be creditable, and if any of them are overlooked, these members cannot receive credit as public safety officers. Non-creditable public safety officers are recognized as on-call members, and instead of receiving 50% credit, they receive 33% credit. On-call and off-duty firefighters, including volunteers, are those that are not on duty but would respond if called. As with other categories of personnel, this area looks only at those who respond on first alarm to structural fire alarms. Because of the time required to notify them, their travel time, and time required to assemble on the fireground, these responders are credited as 1/3 of an on-duty member. Credit for automatic aid responders is an area that changed with the new schedule. In the past, only personnel who responded on automatic aid apparatus that were needed in the grading were creditable. Under the new schedule, personnel who respond on automatic aid apparatus are creditable even if they are not needed by the fire department receiving the aid. There are 2 key elements in determining whether or not automatic aid personnel are creditable. The first is that they must respond on apparatus. Members who respond in POVs are not creditable. The second is that they must respond to all structural fire alarms within the area specified in the automatic aid agreement. If there is any alarm to which the automatic aid apparatus does not respond, the agreement is invalid and no credit is awarded. The special apparatus category of personnel includes those members responding with fire department vehicles other than pumpers and ladder or service trucks. The key to their credibility is that once on the fire scene, these members must be involved in suppression-related tasks as well as search and rescue and water supply operations. Let's look now at the formula used for calculating credit for company personnel. It is fairly straightforward. The number of personnel responding is divided by the number of apparatus in service, and the resulting value is multiplied by 2.5. This credit is the only credit in the fire suppression rating schedule that is open-ended with a value of 15 or more points. Let's look now at a couple of examples that will explain how the credits are calculated. The first example involves a fire department that only needs one engine by basic fire flow. They have one fire station that houses 2 on-duty firefighters on a 24-hour basis. Housed at this station are 2 engine companies and no other apparatus. Upon review of this department's fire reports, we find that both of these trucks ran on every structural fire alarm. We plug the numbers in the formula and we do the calculation, ending up with a credit of 2.5 for manpower. But wait a minute. You will recall from our discussion of ladder and service companies that every area needs to have a ladder or service truck. It would seem that if they had 2 pumpers but only needed one, the other could be called a service company, right? Right. Since both pumpers responded on every fire alarm and there was only a need for one by basic fire flow, PIL will call one pumper an existing engine and the other pumper would be called a service truck. Plugging these numbers into the formula and doing the math, we arrive at a higher credit of 3.33 as opposed to the 2.5 that we got before. Let's look at another example. In this case, you can see that the fire department has added a dedicated service truck to their fire station. In addition to the service truck, PIL found during the records review that sometimes they ran only engine 1 and at other times they responded with only engine 2. Because at least one engine must respond to every structural fire alarm, both engines are now considered in service. So we plug the numbers into the formula, do the math, and get a credit of 2.00 for company personnel. But what if this department always responded with both pumpers for every structural fire alarm in addition to their service truck? Remember, they only need one engine based on their basic fire flow, but they are always responding with 2. In this case, we consider the second pumper to be excess to what's needed. Because this area does not have a reserve engine, we can consider this surplus pumper as a reserve and award credit for it elsewhere. We then deduct the reserve from the existing engine part of the manpower formula, leaving them with only one. We plug the numbers into the formula, do the math, and we see that their overall credit for personnel increases from 2.0 to 3.33. Okay, one last example. In this one, this same department purchases an additional pumper to use as a reserve. When PIL reviews their fire reports, we find that both of their in-service pumpers responded to every structural fire alarm along with their service truck. So again, they have a surplus pumper. This is where the factor AP found in the denominator of the formula comes into play. Because there is a surplus pumper, it can be deducted from the number of apparatus being considered in the manpower formula. We plug in the numbers, do the math, and arrive at a total credit of 3.33 for personnel. These examples have been very basic in that they considered that there was only one station with multiple pumpers in that station. If there were multiple stations with one pumper in each, then there could be no surplus equipment. So what I'm saying is that we can only consider a possibility of there being a surplus pumper when more than one in-service pumper is housed in any fire station. This concludes my presentation related to credit for existing company personnel. As always, we at the Property Insurance Association hope this information has been useful to you. If you have any questions about this presentation or any other rating-related topic, please do not hesitate to call. In closing, I'd like to again thank you for your time and attention, and I hope you have a great day.